Hey Stampers, Diane Dimich here with ddStamps.com, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Blendabilities and some of the basics of what you need to do to use with them. So what I've got is, I've got my Memento Tuxedo Black ink pad, and this one works the best. It is a dye ink, and it's a fade resistant dye ink, and it works best with the Blendabilities because it won't bleed out. If you tried it with StazOn, you'd have an issue because StazOn has alcohol in it and the Blendabilities have alcohol in it, and so they would bleed into each other. So Memento Black ink is the paper, or the ink to use. The paper is Stampin' Up's Whisper White cardstock, and that's what I found to work the best so far, and that's what Stampin' Up recommends also. And then the Blendabilities, and they come as a package of 3, and so you get a light, a medium, and a dark of each color. This happens to be pumpkin pie, the nice thing about these is that they coordinate with the rest of Stampin' Up stuff. So if you're using ribbons or papers or buttons or whatnot in pumpkin pie, they're going to coordinate with these colors. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Another thing I do recommend, especially if you have trouble opening the caps on these are very tight. And if you have trouble, if you just get one of those things from the store, this is just a piece of, I cut it off to open up cans. It just gives you a little something to grip onto, and then the caps come up fairly easy. I don't have a whole lot of trouble getting the caps off, but I just want to recommend that to people that if you do, use one of those little gripper things, that might help. Our Blendabilities have a brush tip on one end and a bullet tip. Now I'm going to have trouble opening them. Bullet tip on the other. I think you can see that. And I have found myself, for the most part, using the finer point. But I also use the brush tip for some other techniques, and we'll get into that later. So, Blendabilities are rectangular so that they don't roll off tables. They're not going anywhere. They're just going to sit here. When you store them, you do want to store them like this so that both ends are equal. That way the ink is going to flow to both ends and you're not going to dry out one end. If you stored them this way, this end is going to dry out, and you don't want that to happen. So we'll go ahead and get started. For this first technique that I'm going to show you, this is called a color book technique. And I'm going to use the stamp, this stamp called Kind Koala. He was one of those stamps in the book that I just thought that I had to have. And I'll go ahead and stamp. I'm going to stamp this right in the middle because I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this image. And this way I've got plenty of room to cut to layer it. So I'm just going ahead and stamp that. And then I'm going to let it dry for about 30 seconds just because I want to make sure that that black ink is dried up in there. And I'm actually going to, this is just for your benefit, but I'm actually going to tape this down to my mat because I'm going to zoom in while I'm doing this, and I don't want that piece of cardstock to move, and I want you to be able to see exactly what I'm doing. So hang in here while I zoom in. I want to make sure that you can still see what I'm doing. Cool. Okay, so for this first technique, what you're going to do is, it's just called Color Book, and I'm just going to use the orange ink, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to color this all in. And you can see how I'm coloring it. I'm using circular motions and just filling in the whole thing. What I like about these markers when you're doing the color book technique is that you don't get any streaky lines like you do with regular markers. It all kinds of blends into an even looking color, so you don't have any lines. Even when I go over there a little bit, and you can go over several times. I think I missed a spot there. So just regular coloring. One of the things you need to do, make sure, is that you're protecting your surface underneath your project, because these do bleed through the cardstock. So whatever you color with Blendabilities will probably have to be layered because it bleeds right through, and I'll pull this up and show you here in just a second. But yeah, I just use circular motions all the way till I'm colored in. And then as this dries, it will even out. And if you have some issues, if you see some spots that maybe you didn't get as much ink, you can always go back over it. If your ink dries and you go back over it, you will end up with a darker shade of that color. Anyway, so that is color book technique. This isn't very even. I'm gonna try to add some color in there to make it a little bit more even. And then I'm going to show you the back so you can see what I mean when I talk about color book technique. So there it is. It's evenly colored. I think you can see that. I'm hoping you can. When I pull this off and flip it over, you can see where it bleeds into the back. And that is typical of alcohol markers. That's not unusual for them to bleed like that into the back. And that's why you layer things with alcohol markers. So there you have it. There's just the first little technique I wanted to show you, and that's just coloring, and then you can see how you get such that nice even tone of your project. So thank you very much.